Yet another dreadful performance from FC Barcelona. First it was against Sociedad and last night against Shakhtar. Barcelona lost 1-0. And it's funny, if you go back to my previous video or previous videos, you can look at the title and I said there, I asked the question, I asked, when until Barcelona's luck run out? And finally it has run out. And Xavi is to blame for this, guys, honestly. Now, I'm not going to do the usual tactical analysis that we normally do because I feel like this is deeper than tactics. This go far beyond the tactics. It has to do with some key decisions. I think it's all about decisions. And in this video, we'll be discussing it all. But before we get into all of that, please do subscribe to the channel. Let's get right into the video. Honestly, when I saw this lineup, I got mood swings like a pregnant woman. You know, Xavi, seriously, we're on the brink of Champions League qualification and you decided you're going to play Oriol Romeo in midfield. Are you serious right now? You decided to play, okay, I'm going to play Alonso. I'm going to play Rafinha, who just came from injury. I'm going to play these guys. And, you know, we're on the brink of qualification. If we just could qualify for this game by winning the game against Shakhtar, then you have 2 games to do your rotations. And why are rotations so important? The team needs to come together. We need to string performances together. But no, Xavi said, I'm going to rotate. And I don't think Xavi understands the fact that when you rotate the team, when you make so many changes to a team, you disrupt the team's balance, you disrupt the team's flow and the fluidity of the team. And I don't think Xavi gets that. He doesn't get it through his thick skull. I know I'm going off on him right now, but he's the manager of Barcelona and he's responsible for the way that the team plays. And he needs to get the stick. He deserves it. And up until this point, if you still think that the double pivot actually works for Barcelona, you are honestly delusional. Right, because it's not working. And a lot of people say, a lot of fans actually say, oh, but Manchester City uses a double pivot. You know what's the difference between Manchester City and Barcelona is that City actually has great wingers. Who do we have? Ferran Torres and Rafinha. They have Doku. They have Phil Foden, guys who are great in one-on-one situations. Look at Romeo and Xavi. These guys were like a double pivot all the time. Barcelona don't need a double pivot. Look at this instance for an example. Gundogan and Romeo, both of them are marked. Do you think Ronald Araujo can play a ball to them now? They're actually marked, right? So there's no use in having that pivot because look at this. If Gundogan wants to actually get on the ball, he needs to leave that position to the left back space. Why just not pick a left back there in the first place then? Even Garcia Pimienta is playing with a single pivot. Do you think that Barcelona cannot play with a single pivot because you're scared of goals? We are conceding goals anyway, so why play a pivot? I'm no expert in coaching, but I honestly also believe that Xavi's tactics does not correspond with one another. It's not balanced, right? For an example, you see this tactic where Barcelona has this overload to isolate rule, where we want to drag the opposition across to one side of the pitch, in which we got decimated by Sociedad actually, and then we want to switch over to the other side, right? Why would you want to do that and then you have Rafinha? Wouldn't you want Lamine Yamal in that position in order to destroy that left back? But I don't want to continue talking about Barcelona. We all know the problems we have. We all know the tactics. But I wanted to show you guys the double pivot, right? And we're going to talk about some double pivots and see how other teams operate. Because I honestly believe if you want to have a double pivot, you need excellent wingers, right? Because that's the point of a pivot, to give the wingers chance to go up the pitch. But Barcelona has a pivot to basically be defensively solid, and that's the difference, guys. That's the major difference, and that is what you guys do not understand. Barcelona does not have a pivot to have and do that. But let's get right into it. You can look at this frame and tell me, oh, the Zerbi uses a double pivot, but if it was a double pivot flat, the other player would have been in that position right over there. And you can see he still maintains his back four because the opposition cannot mark them and be near at the same time. You could actually argue that the Zerbi is using a double pivot and that he's not using a double pivot, but what remains the fact that they remain in a triangle, you know. And what is actually crazy is look at how the left back is coming back. However, we want to pick a centre back to play there all the time, which is not the case, right? And look how these guys are able to drop towards the ball, where you see Frankie de Jong has to move where that full left back is right now. And that is the difference, guys. These small differences that we have to look at, and that is what we don't understand. Look at how the fullback can now go back to his space, you know. But Barca have a midfielder and a fullback in that position. And that is the small differences that makes the biggest of differences in teams positioning, guys. If we want to be a positional team, we have to do it good. So right here you can see that the centre backs are in really good positions to receive the ball. No pressure on them really, because the ball can easily go into midfield. And you actually see that Salah and Elliott has to focus on the fullback, so they cannot really commit to a press here. And that is the genius about this. Because Elliott has to cover the fullback, Once the ball go back to the goalkeeper, he cannot join the press, and he's a winger actually. He cannot join the press, and everybody therefore has their players that they have to mark. Look at Salah. Salah cannot press the centre back because he has to worry about the fullback. So that is what a single pivot gives you, right? It gives the team extra players to mark. But one thing you'll notice, look at how play is progressing, and the Brighton now has a double pivot. Look at how narrow Liverpool can come now. So now they have extra players that can jump out of the press, and Gakpo can easily go into that centre back with Salah cover the other one, meaning they have to go to the right side fullback. And now Brighton is in a situation of where they cannot find their fullbacks, right? Because everything is closed down. So they are now passing the ball between their centre backs. And look at how ironically, as they pass the ball to the fullback, they can easily now be covered. And what's the point of having a pivot if teams are going to close down centrally? But let's take a look at Pep Guardiola's pivot. People wanted me to look at this, but let's take a look at what he does. For the most part, Pep Guardiola first plays with a single pivot to see how the opposition is going to press him, right? It's a really interesting position that he takes up in this instance. However, we see the tiki-taka at its best when Pep is playing, Look at how De Bruyne is dropping into that space, while at the same time, you will see now in a second that Riyad Mahrez also comes into the space, into the half space, especially when De Bruyne drops. So he's now receiving the ball into space because those midfielders have to focus on De Bruyne, which actually allow Rico Lewis to go up the pitch. And you can see these guys have all made movements, right? And that movement now has affected the shape of Arsenal in this instance. So that is what you have and what you get with the movements that you get. However, Pep has variations, of course. He uses a single pivot. He has a double pivot that he uses, especially with the inverted fullback. So Rico Lewis joins Rodri in midfield to form a double pivot. And here's the difference. He's not picked as a defensive midfielder. He's a right back that inverts. So there's movement involved. And now you can see there's kind of like a man-to-man situation with everybody having a player to mark, right? But here's the difference between Barcelona and City. City actually have great ball-playing centre-backs. And look how Haaland is now dropping into that space in order to receive the ball. He drops as a false 9. And Haaland actually do this way better than Robert Lewandowski. So Haaland is now in that space to receive the ball. And now you can see Haaland dropping. Now there's an overload in midfield for Manchester City. They have 3 players. And look at all of the options that Rico Lewis now has to pass the ball. That is major differences between Barcelona and Manchester City. So by the time the ball ends up back with the centre back, you see Haaland and Kevin De Bruyne running in behind. And this is what you rarely ever see from Barcelona. However, as the ball gets progressed, you see the centre backs now has full control and City has moved off the pitch. The double pivot, it's still intact, right? But here's the thing, the centre backs, these are the keys, guys. We don't have these kind of centre backs. Look at how when the centre back gets pressed, this guy, look at John Stones right now. John Stones is being pressed, but however, he is actually press resistant and is moving away from the player, right? The same with you look at Akanji, look at Nathan Ake. All of these guys, they are playing towards the press. They are press resistant. But let's look at Arteta's Arsenal and to see how he uses his midfield and his pivots in particular to see Rice and Thomas Partey. Arsenal build up the same way like Barcelona with a back 3, and you actually see Thomas Partey in this instance as a sole pivot against Manchester City, a sole pivot. Imagine that. But look at how Declan Rice, who's also a central defensive midfielder, drop into space, drawing somebody out of position. And that is now how you see it, right? And it's Rodri that is actually, I think. But look at how the number 9 is actually in space now. And that is what happens when you draw people out of position. You actually alter their space. And look at how these guys are like a trio, Odegaard, Partey, and Rice. But I hope you guys see my point when I'm saying that Barcelona doesn't need a double pivot. We actually need to play a single pivot. I hope you guys get it. We are still losing even with a double pivot. So why not try the single pivot? But let me know down in the comment section what you guys think. As always, do subscribe to the channel, as that will be helping us a lot to get the family to grow. We upload at least 3 times a week and we do tactical analysis on every Barcelona game. So if you're new around here, please do subscribe to the channel. And in closing, I just wanted to say Robert Lewandowski is another player that I feel so sorry for, because Xavi is not playing towards his strengths and playing so that he can score. But let me know, what do you think? Goodbye.